Jacob, hey, congratulations on this new documentary film, Separated.
Thanks, Gig. I really appreciate it.
It is such a very captivating story, especially the timeliness right now. But tell us from your end on how did this documentary came to be?
Well, after I covered this issue at the time, Gig for NBC News and MSNBC, I went into those facilities and I saw the separated kids with my own eyes. I still had questions about how the U.S. government could do something so deliberately cruel, so haphazardly implemented, which I think is a generous description. And so I wrote the book. I wrote Separated Inside an American Tragedy to try to explore some of those issues further and to further my own reporting that I had started at NBC News. And when Errol Morris read the book, he too shared with me that he had some of the same questions. And so it was very clear to me that Errol Morris could further the reporting and the storytelling in the way that only Errol Morris could. And so that was 4 years ago that he and I set out to make this film. And what he has done is create something that is more relevant today than I ever could have possibly anticipated in the way that only Errol Morris can. And I'm so profoundly grateful to get to work with him on this motion picture.
Tell us about your extent of working with Errol Morris on this project and how much new information or updated information that you wanted to put into a documentary film.
Well, what Errol does is he stares into people's souls, through the Interrotron, the device that he created, to have people look directly into the camera as he speaks to them and look face to face with him. And the nature of the interviews that Errol has done, whether it's with Jonathan White or Jalen Suolog, two dedicated career civil servants that did everything they could to stop the separations from happening, with Legal Alert, the lead lawyer from the ACLU, who helped stop this policy in federal court, with Elaine Duke, the acting secretary of Homeland Security, who preceded Kirsten Nielsen, who signed the policy into place, or maybe most notably with Scott Lloyd, the political appointee in charge of the Department of Office of, excuse me, the Office of Refugee Resettlement, who was in the custody, had the custody, the care and custody of these 5,500 children who were deliberately ripped apart. He takes it to a level that I never could have done as an interviewer. To hear or to see people's genuine thought processes about being a part of what I think a Republican appointed judge called one of the most shameful chapters in the history of our country. And just to take it one step further, Errol employs, as Errol always has, narrative vignettes in his filmmaking, in this case, to tell the story of something that I never could have documented even if I wanted to, which was the actual site of the separations taking place, by collaborating with Eugenio Caballero, the Oscar-winning production designer, and Gabriela Cartol, and a whole team of people in the Mexican cast and crew of this film who help visualize, get to the emotional truth of what the families have gone through in a way that I never could have told. And I hope one day they will be able to as well.
During your investigation process, what actually surprised you the most?
I think that what Errol has uncovered here that I didn't fully wrap my head around as a reporter is how deliberately cruel these separations were. I think at the time, Adam Serwer had coined for The Atlantic the phrase, the cruelty is the point, very memorably. But as a reporter, I would often be asked, how do you know that it was deliberately cruel? Where's the evidence? In this film, the evidence is presented as emails on the screen and in first person interviews with the people who were in the room. You will hear from people that harm to children was the point. You will see in the screen that officials responsible for reuniting family members when it was happening were calling this policy and the reunifications themselves a fiasco, or saying that reunifications of families who had been separated undermines the entire effort of the policy. I don't think there's a question that anybody will have after watching Errol Morris is Separated that there was intentionality and deliberate cruelty at play here.
Now, of course, you know that today, thanks to the internet and social media, there's always misconceptions about family separation and all those.
Tell me about it. Yeah.
What are the biggest disappointments that you hope that this documentary will actually dispel?
That Donald Trump and the Trump administration were the only administration ever to use family separation deliberately as a tool of immigration enforcement to harm people from coming to this country. Surely family separation has been a part of American history since its founding, with Native Americans and enslaved people who were brought here against their will. But as a tool of immigration enforcement, Donald Trump is the only president to ever employ family separations on a wholesale, systematic basis. He's certainly not the only president to use deterrence and harm to immigrants as part of official immigration policy. That's a Democratic and Republican undertaking for the better part of a generation. But Donald Trump is the only president to ever use family separations in the way that he did, and he's on the verge of doing it again with his mass deportation plan now that he's coming back to office.
Now, because of the timeliness, does that actually mean it will be the same or it's going to get worse?
I think they've told you what it's going to be. It's going to be orders of magnitude bigger than anything that we've ever seen before. Mass deportation is just family separation by another name. And Gig, I reported from the floor of the conventions as they held up those mass deportation signs. I saw them about as close as I am to the screen talking to you right now. And mass deportation is going to be a supersize of the family separation policy. It's not family separation of children from their parents at the border, but it is family separation of parents from their children in the interior of the country, taking them away from them in their schools and in their workplaces, and maybe even in their places of worship, according to the reporting of Julia Ainsley, my colleague at NBC News. When family separation was developed, it was developed in secret. And now they're telling you directly and in the full view of the public what they're going to do. And it is going to be a much larger proposition than family separations ever were.
Now, what is your opinion about American history? Because xenophobia has been part of American history for so long, and with this recent election, immigration is one of the top political subjects that were concerned on voters' minds.
I think that the Trump campaign used well, exploited well people's fears and insecurities and anxieties. But the way that they did it was to paint a false and misleading and dishonest picture of the role of immigrants in people's ways of life who are struggling in the United States. I'm thinking of Springfield, Ohio. I'm thinking of Trump coming down the escalator calling immigrants rapists and criminals. Um, there are millions of people in this country who are undocumented, who are a part of the fabric of society, whether they cross the southern border or overstayed a visa, um, or found themselves here by some other way. And I think while family separation is the largest and most extreme outgrowth of decades of official deterrence and punitive-based immigration policy, what it really is an exploitation of the xenophobic and racist and bigoted fears.
So in the case, what do you think is the potential solutions if we can't use family separation as a deterrent?
What I think this film teaches us is that deterrence as a policy has never worked in the United States. It didn't work when Bill Clinton did it by building the first wave of border walls. It didn't work when George W. Bush exponentially increased the size of the Border Patrol in the wake of 9/11 when he created DHS. It didn't work when Barack Obama deported more people than any president in the history of the United States of America. And it certainly didn't work when, like that, Donald Trump separated 5,500 children from their parents. It didn't work when Joe Biden deported thousands of Haitians back to Haiti. I went to Haiti and I watched them do that. People still come from desperate and dangerous situations because they have no other choice. And I think until America really reckons with that and understands that our bipartisan, deterrence-based, punitive-based criminalization of immigrants has failed in stopping people from coming here for the better part of a generation, until we all realize that, we're going to just be doomed to be repeating the same mistake over and over again, thinking that it's going to work. I don't know what a immigration policy or philosophy looks like that is, in the words of the Biden administration, what they had hoped for: fair and safe, but orderly, while also being humane. Um, that's up to the policymakers to figure out. But what I can tell you as a reporter who's observed this now for the better part of my decade at NBC News, deterrence-based immigration policy does not stop people from coming to the United States in search of a better life.
Well said. And Jacob, with the new administration coming in, are you going to be extending further investigations into it, or do you think the story has already been told?
Oh, no, I think it was a duty of all of us, myself especially, to continue to hold up a mirror to society, to continue to talk to our sources and families who are in the crosshairs of these types of policies, to um, uh, probe the government and learn from government officials inside the government, both career civil servants and political appointees, about what's happening, because so goes these policies, so goes the nation. the people that we're talking about are deeply intertwined with the way of life that you and I live every single day, and the folks that are listening to us and watching us live every single day. And so I think we have a duty and an obligation to continue this story and telling this story. I'm honored to have done it in the way that only Errol Morris has. But I think there's more to be told.
Well said. And let me wrap it up with one last question with you, Jacob. As audiences everywhere have a chance to watch this MSNBC documentary Separated, what is the one most important take you hope they walk away with?
That we all have the power to make a difference. That this story is one where in the summer of 2018, people stood up around the world to stop the policy from happening. It wasn't Republican and Democratic, it was bipartisan, it was universal in its condemnation. The Pope spoke out, and it was the one major policy reversal of former President Trump, now President-elect Trump's first term. He said he didn't like the sight and the feeling of families being separated. He didn't say it was morally opposed to it. He said he didn't like how it looked on the news and sounded when it was leaked by Ginger Thompson in that ProPublica audio that none of us will ever forget, hearing the cries of the children from inside those facilities. And so what I hope people take away from it is actually a hopeful message that it doesn't have to be this way, that these things don't have to happen in our name, no matter what your politics are, and that we all have a stake in it, both citizen and non-citizen alike in this country.
Well said. Well, Jacob, thank you very much for carrying this conversation with us. You worked well with Errol to provide a very captivating documentary that the whole nation needs to check out. So thank you very much, Jacob.
I greatly appreciate that, Gig. Thank you.